rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Here's today's prophecy update. A new UN Secretary General has been chosen by the UN Security Council to replace Ban Ki-moon on January 1, 2017. Portugal's Antonio Guterres has been chosen and will be ratified by the UN General Assembly within the next few days. Guterres is a Roman Catholic and a socialist. He served as president of Portugal from 1995 to 2002. He also served as president of the Socialist International for some time. It's interesting that Guterres takes the helm of the UN at this time, since the Bible prophesies an alliance between socialism and Catholicism will rule the world in the days just ahead. We'll tell you much more on today's edition of End of the Age. Well, we've been talking for some time about the choice of a new UN Secretary General. Ban Ki-moon came to the end of his 2 terms, and so far, no Secretary General has occupied more than 2 terms, even though there's nothing in the UN Constitution that says a person cannot remain UN Secretary General more than 2 5-year terms, yet it has not been done. Now, what does all of this mean? You know that there were some rumors out there that perhaps the UN would choose Barack Obama as the Secretary General. There were other rumors that said, it's really time for a woman. There's never been a woman, and there were 7 different women that threw their hat in the ring for the position. However, when it all boiled down, it became pretty much a consensus that Antonio Guterres of Portugal should be the next UN Secretary General. Now, before we go into an article that I have here that I want you to hear, I want to just point something out that's taking place in our world. So Guterres is going to lead the United Nations, the world's only body designed to be a one-world government. And he is Roman Catholic and a socialist. Jim Kaine is running for Vice President of the United States of America. He's a Catholic and a socialist. And then Pope Francis, who is Pope of the largest segment of the Christian religion, he is Catholic and he is a socialist. So what's going on here, especially at a time when most of the nations of the world are embracing socialism? Most of the governments throughout Europe are socialistic. So what's happening here? Is there any method to this madness? Now, I mentioned in our open that the Bible prophesies a union between socialism and Catholicism in the end time. I just want to take you there real quickly because you need to hear this for yourself rather than have me read it to you. But, well, let me just take you straight to Revelation chapter number 17, verse 3. Now, chapter 17 is the best snapshot of what the world is going to look like in the final 3.5 years just before the second coming of Jesus to the earth. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. We don't have time. But let's look at verse 3 of chapter 17. John speaking here, he's having visions on the Isle of Patmos. Here's what he said. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So we've got a woman on the back of a scarlet-colored beast, and this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. Let's talk about the beast first. This same beast is seen earlier in Revelation in chapter number 13. In Revelation 13, verse 1 and 2, there's a beast that rises up out of the sea, and this beast has the body of the leopard, Germany, the feet of the bear, Russia, the mouth of the lion, Great Britain, the 10 horns of the 10-horn kingdom, a 10-nation alliance that will soon emerge out of Europe. Well, it's pretty obvious that we have a 7-headed, 10-horned beast in Revelation 13, which is the symbol of the one world government of the Antichrist. If you read Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 8, it's very clear. It's right there. It actually says that the beast will have power to continue 42 months. He will make war against the saints and overcome them. So it's a picture of the Antichrist during the Great Tribulation, 7-headed, 10-horned beast. Now we go to Revelation 17, and we see the same thing. We see this beast having 7 heads and 10 horns. It doesn't give us all the rest of the detail, but it does give us detail we were not given in Revelation 13. Now, one more thing before we leave Revelation 13. After the first beast, there's a second beast that's different than the first one. This is in verse 11 through verse number 15. The second beast has 2 horns. Now, the first beast had 7 horns. The second has 2. And these 2 horns, the Bible says the beast looked like a lamb, but spake like a dragon. Now, what a paradox. In the Bible, a lamb is a symbol of Jesus Christ. The dragon is the symbol of Satan. So this second beast looks like Jesus Christ, but speaks like the devil. We can prove that this second beast is the false prophet because the passage goes on to say that this second beast will do miracles and influence the world to give their allegiance to the first beast, who is the Antichrist. And then in Revelation 19, verse 19 and 20, it says that the beast and the false prophet who wrought miracles before the beast, they both were cast alive into the lake of fire at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. Okay, now let's pull all this together. So we've got a 7-headed, 10-horned beast in Revelation chapter number 13, verse 1 and 2. We have another beast that symbolizes the false prophet. They're in alliance. They're in coalition. They are sharing power. Now let's jump to Revelation 17. I just read to you. Again, we see an alliance, a coalition, but this time it's painted differently. This time there's a woman sitting on the back of this beast. Now, a beast in Bible prophecy always represents a nation or a kingdom. A woman in Bible prophecy always represents a church. For example, the true church is symbolized as a virgin. False churches are symbolized as harlots. Now, in the 17th chapter, this woman on the back of this beast is symbolized as a harlot. It also states in this particular chapter that the woman has a name, mother of harlots. So not only is she a harlot herself, but she has daughters who are harlots. So this is prophecy of an end-time religious alliance that will be in league with the one world government and the Antichrist. Now, let's see if we can understand what this is really all about. So the beast here is the combo beast of Revelation 13, Great Britain, Russia, Germany, the 10 nations of Europe, all joined together in the kingdom of the Antichrist during the final 3.5 years. So that's what that represents. Skip to Revelation 17, same thing. Only the details are not repeated, but another detail is brought in that helps us, and that is that the beast will be a red beast, as in red China, red Russia, red Romania. Red is the official color of communism or socialism. Now, I started out by saying that we've got this coincidence happening right now, this tremendous union between socialism and Catholicism in our world. I'm talking about the new Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. I'm talking about Tim Kaine. I'm talking about the Pope and many others. Actually, until the death of Justice Scalia, we had 6 Catholics on the Supreme Court, 3 non-Catholics. I think 2 of those are Jewish. Nevertheless, what's all this about? Well, it has been traditionally in America that we would have 1 Catholic, 1 Jew, and the rest Protestants on our Supreme Court. That's totally blown away now while we weren't paying attention. Now because of the death of Scalia, we now have 5 Catholics, we have 2 Jews, and 1 I don't know what. Anyway, here's the bottom line. So we're seeing this tremendous assertion of power, and you may say, what difference does it make? Well, let me just tell you this. The traditional coronation ceremony of the popes until recently, I'm talking about for the last 2,000 years, went something like this. Now, this includes up to Pius XII. This particular coronation ceremony was used on March the 12th of 1939. Here's what was said to him. Receive the tiara. There's a triple crown that the popes always wore, adorned with 3 crowns, and know that thou art Father of princes and kings, ruler of the world, vicar of our Savior Jesus Christ. Now I can tell right now that you're reeling. What did you say? Okay, one more time. These are the words that were pronounced at the time of crowning a new pope, and they had been used for centuries. And this happened with Pope Pius XII. Here's the words. Receive the tiara adorned with 3 crowns, and know that thou art the Father of princes and kings, ruler of the world, vicar, or in the place of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Now that's at the heart of the Catholic religion. They believe that the Catholic Church should rule the world, and they believe the Pope, as the head of the Catholic Church, should rule over all the rulers of the world. They believe that ever since the founding of the Roman Catholic Church. Well, if they believe that, now, more recently, some of that, I couldn't get the latest coronation words in time for this program, but this is what has been the essence and the belief system of the Roman Catholic Church for almost 2,000 years. Now, if they believe that they are to rule the world, and suddenly we find ourselves with the head of the United Nations, with Tim Kaine, who is vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton. He is Catholic and he is a socialist. And then we did have 6 out of 9 Supreme Court justices that were Roman Catholic. I have not investigated their political bend, whether they're socialist or capitalist. Nevertheless, does anything about this pattern at all alarm you? Because the Bible specifically teaches that there's going to be a union between Catholicism and socialism that's going to rule the world. That's going to be the kingdom of the Antichrist. Now, keep that in your mind, and remember, the beast in Revelation 17 is a red beast, and red is used as the symbol of communism in the Bible and in our world today. So, we've got a socialist beast out of the heart of Europe, consisting of Great Britain, Russia, Germany, and most of the powers of Europe. That's going to be the power base of the Antichrist. It'll be a socialist power base. And this woman riding on the back of this beast. Let's find out who the woman is. In verse number 1, the Bible talks about this woman. In verse 18 of the same chapter, chapter 17, it says, the woman is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. I just read the oath. You're the ruler of the world. You're the father of kings and princes. So, now you can get your Bible down, check me out. Revelation 17, verse 18, that this is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And then back to verse 1, it says that the woman sat upon many waters. Now all this is symbolism, but the symbolism is explained in the chapter. Now go to verse number 15. The waters which thou sawest, where the harlot sitteth, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Wait, let's get this straight. So the woman is a city, yet she sits on peoples, multitudes, nations, tongues. Obviously, the headquarters for a vast international system. So what city could this be? It's really very simple. Because the beast had 7 heads. Verse number 9 of the chapter tells us the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Remember, the woman's a city. So the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the city sits. There is a city called the City of 7 Hills. It's none other than Rome. I have a lasting impression. I'll never forget the first time I was in Rome. I stood outside the Colosseum, and our Roman Catholic guide gathered our group together, some 48 of us, and proudly said, from here you can see several of the famous 7 hills of Rome. And then he started naming them. There's Avignon, there's Palatine, and he started around, and my eyes are getting bigger. I knew the scripture, but I had not a clue that it was talked about so openly within Rome itself. I was amazed. And I thought to myself, if he knew who I was and that I'm going to tell the whole world this, he wouldn't be telling me this, but he did. Well, I had actually investigated it several years before because I had heard this teaching, but I didn't want to teach it irresponsibly. You know, we should not take liberties with the truth. If it's not the truth, don't teach it. Well, I had gone off to the library because I had heard people teach that the woman was the Roman Catholic Church. And I said, wait, that would be so irresponsible to teach that without absolute proof. So I went off to the library. And of course, back in those days, that was our only resource. We had no internet. So when I went to the library, I went to the encyclopedia, I think it was Britannica, and I opened it up to Rome. I was stunned. I mean, I was ready to set in for 2 or 3 weeks of research to see if I could uncover this very important truth. I opened it up to Rome, and it said, Rome, the city of 7 hills. And then it named each of the hills. My jaw dropped. I could not believe it was that easy. Well, then, of course, it was confirmed by my Roman Catholic guide when I was in Rome. And then since that time, I've walked over all those 7 hills. I've been in Rome several times. So anyway, interesting. So what is going on here? Well, it goes on to say there's some more clues given. In verse 4, it says the woman was arrayed in red and purple. There are 2 ruling bodies of the Roman Church, the College of Cardinals and the College of Bishops and Archbishops. The policy of the church is that the cardinals always wear red, the bishops and non-cardinal archbishops wear purple. The 2 ruling bodies, red, purple. And then it said in verse 6, the woman was drunken with the blood of the saints. During the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church brutally persecuted the reformers that were breaking away. They burned them at the stake. They nailed their tongues to tables. The tortures were horrendous. Somewhere between 6 million and 68 million. Nobody knows the exact number. Nevertheless, the woman was drunken with the blood of the saints. So every clue given in the chapter fits perfectly. Now, why am I talking about this? Because of the emerging alliance between socialism and Catholicism. Right here in chapter 17, red beast, woman, and every clue for the woman's identity fits perfectly. So we have a socialist Roman Catholic leader at the United Nations. Now, what's the chance of him being the Antichrist? I don't know. I've never believed that the Antichrist has to be head of the United Nations. For example, we have leaders in our world today that are considered much more influential than Ban Ki-moon. even though Ban Ki-moon is running the machinery of the one world governmental system, yet you'd have to say that Barack Obama and Vladimir Putin and a few others are more powerful than Ban Ki-moon. So it could very well be the same situation again, that the Antichrist will emerge and will dominate the world and use the apparatus of the United Nations to rule the world. Cannot tell you that for sure. Nevertheless, this is what we are learning as of today. Now, there's a lot more to this, but I haven't had time to do all the research. When I do, I'll bring it back for another program. In the meantime, though, I want to give you a little bit of this article. By the way, this is all explained in depth in our Understanding the End Time series. We go into Revelation 13 and into Revelation 17, and we've got documentation that will pop your eyes out. I mean, it is so stunning. It'll rock your world, I promise you. But if you love the truth, you won't care. If you love the truth more than you love your tradition, if you love your tradition more than you love the truth, just don't get the set, because it'll do nothing but make you mad. But if you love truth more than you love your tradition, then get the Understand the End Time series. Every person on the planet should get the Understand the End Time series. And by the way, it comes in 8 languages, almost for certain. If yours is English or Spanish or French or Russian or Arabic or Chinese, it's available to you. It's called Understand the End Time. You can receive your own copy by calling us 1-800-END-TIME, 14 DVDs. I have people walk up to me all the time and say, I can't believe it. I understood it all. You changed my worldview. I hear it all the time, and it will yours as well. I promise you. The number to call, 800-END-TIME. Ask for the Understanding the End Time series, 1-800-363-8463. I want to get into a little bit of this article. The article is entitled, Antonio Guterres Set to Win. This comes from CNN just yesterday. Former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Guterres is set to become the next United Nations Secretary General after the 15 Security Council members agreed to put his name forward to a formal vote. And almost always, once the UN Security Council agrees on, I think every time, the UN General Assembly has fallen in line and ratified the decision of the UN Security Council. Guterres, who was head of the UN's refugee agency for 10 years until 2015, emerged as the Security Council's runaway favorite after the latest in a series of straw polls on Wednesday. Vitaly Churkin, the Russian ambassador to the UN and current Security Council president, told reporters that Guterres would face a vote in the Security Council on Thursday. That, of course, would be today. Today, after our 6th straw poll, we have a clear favorite, and his name is Antonio Guterres, he said. The Secretary General of the UN is appointed in a 2-stage process. A candidate is first recommended by the Security Council and must then be approved by the 193-member General Assembly. 13 candidates entered the race, necessitating a series of straw polls held by the Security Council to encourage a thinning of the field and to help to settle on a single candidate. In every ballot, the 15 Security Council members assessed each candidate by voting they either vote encourage or discourage or no opinion. Those are the 3 possible ways you can vote. In the latest vote, Guterres received 13 encourage votes, no discourage votes, and 2 votes of no opinion. So he got 13 for, none against, and 2 no opinion. Guterres, a trained engineer who worked as an assistant professor before entering politics in 1974, led his country from 1995 to 2002 as the head of the Socialist Party. He's a dyed-in-the-wool socialist. From 2005 to 2015, he served as the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. He is credited with cutting costs at the agency during his tenure as well as lifting its performance as it grappled with the migrant crisis. Now, I'm not sure being the head of the refugee department is really a good recommendation. This refugee situation has been an utter mess, but nevertheless, they apparently think it was good. Continuing on, a practicing Catholic, Gutierrez, remarried after his first wife died of cancer and has 2 children. In Gutierrez's vision statement, in applying for the position, he wrote of the challenges facing the world in terms of rising inequality, terrorism and organized crime, climate change, and the proliferation of armed actors internationally. Now, the United States and the United Kingdom ambassadors praised the choice. The ambassadors to the UN for both the U.S. and the U.K., both veto-wielding members, either one of them could have said no and he would have been out. Both veto-wielding members, permanent members of the Security Council, along with Russia, China, and France, welcomed the result. Samantha Power, U.S. ambassador to the UN, said that in the end, there was just a candidate whose experience, vision, and versatility across a range of areas proved compelling. People united around a person who has impressed throughout the process and has impressed across multiple axes in his service in Portuguese politics and at the helm of the United Nations Human Rights Council. Matthew Rycroft, the UK's ambassador to the UN, paid tribute to the 7 women who had run for the role. While it was high time for a woman Secretary General, he said, "It's fair to say that Antonio Guterres has come through this new and improved and more transparent process at the top of the league of the 13 who competed." Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to End of the Age. Those of you staying with us for the second half hour, we'll be back in just a moment.
From Here to Armageddon, a new exciting 8-lesson series to share with your friends and family. Order yours right away.
Answering many questions like, how far are we from the Battle of Armageddon? What will happen between now and then? Where are we on the timeline? Your questions answered in this exciting 8-lesson series, From Here to Armageddon.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-ENDTIME, 1-800-363-8463. Order yours right away.
Who would have thought it that the Berlin Wall is right there in the prophecies of the Bible? I'm holding here a chunk of the Berlin Wall. A friend of mine was in Berlin the night that the wall fell, November 9, 1989. He cut a piece of the wall for himself, twice this large. He was kind enough to cut it in half. He had read my book, A Message for the President, in which I had stated 3 years before this that the Berlin Wall would come down, the 2 Germanys would be reunited, and that would be the event that would mark the beginning of the one world governmental system called the New World Order.
Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-ENDTIME to order The Berlin Wall in Bible Prophecy.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the Watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the Archives button.
There's a couple of urgent announcements. Don't forget that End of the Age is shown on television networks around the world, the most dominant of those being TBN every Friday evening at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, and also Daystar every Sunday evening at 11:30 Eastern Time. You can do the math depending on what time zone you live in. I encourage you to watch us on television. Not only TBN, not only Daystar, but many other networks are carrying End of the Age, and I would urge you certainly to watch for those things. I also want to tell you about prophecy conferences that I will be holding over the next 2 days. I will be in Tulsa, Oklahoma this coming Friday evening. That's tomorrow night at 7:30. And then I will be in Moore, Oklahoma, Saturday evening and Sunday morning. For the details, I'll give those to you a little bit later on. Don't have them in front of me right now, but for those details, you can go to our website, go to endtime.com, endtime.com, click on the events button, and then on conferences, and you'll see all the details of where we're going to be. Great things are happening. It's amazing. I want to get back to this article because the person speaking said the world needed a strong Secretary General who would provide a convening power and a moral authority at a time when the world is divided on issues above all like Syria. Now, Ban Ki-moon was known as a person behind the scenes, but not considered a real strong Secretary General. Well, they're saying now that this man is expected to be a much stronger Secretary General. We'll see what happens. Now, in conjunction with this, I felt like I had to bring this article. This article appeared just yesterday on thehill.com on October the 5th of 2016. It's entitled, UN Makes Power Play Against Trump. So the United Nations is against Donald Trump. The one world government is campaigning against Donald Trump. Listen to this. International governments have made a power play against Donald Trump by ratifying an international climate deal earlier than expected, effectively preventing him from canceling the deal as he has promised to do. Now, let's pause a moment. You may remember that Barack Obama went off to Paris, signed a big climate change deal without any authority. I mean, he can make a treaty, but he's got to bring it back to the Congress for approval, but he's not doing that. He just signed it like a dictator, and he's been acting like a dictator for some time. He just signed it like a dictator, and they're already getting ready to put it into fruition. Now, let me read some more of the article so you can really get the situation. The European Union's Tuesday decision to join the Paris climate deal will push the deal over the threshold for ratification. It will formally take effect in 30 days. That means Trump, should he be elected president in November, could not cancel or renegotiate the terms of the agreement. President Obama, now this is all the opinion of this writer, by the way, President Obama committed the United States to reduce its emissions by 26% to 28% by 2025 as part of the deal. The agreement is non-binding, so Trump would be free to ignore it if he wins the White House. Don't forget that phrase. In one breath, they say he can't cancel it, but yet he goes on down to say, but he would be able to ignore it. Continuing on, some say Trump's rhetoric about the deal helped speed up ratification. Most officials expected the climate deal, negotiated in December in Paris, to take effect no earlier than next year. A similar international climate accord, the Kyoto Protocol, wasn't ratified for 5 years. But the specter of a Trump presidency appears to have spurred the deal along. His threat stimulated this rapid series of ratifications. China, the United States, Europe, and many others. Robert Stavins, the director of the Harvard Project on Climate Agreements, wrote in an email. Now, it says ratifications by the United States. Hasn't been ratified by the United States. It's been signed by one man, Barack Obama. In order for it to be ratified, it has to go to the Senate, and it must get a 2/3 vote. He knows he can't get it. So you know what? He's going to do what he's been doing for a long time now. Ignore the Congress. If he could, he'd just dismiss them and rule the United States with dictatorial powers. However, he knows he can't get by with that. Nevertheless, that's what's going on right now. He's acting like this is going to become international law, but it's not going to, because the only way treaties are binding on the United States is if it's first of all negotiated by the administration and then submitted to the Senate for ratification. They can't get that ratification, so they're skipping that, conveniently skipping that to try to cram it down our throats. Let's continue on with the article. John Kokut the global climate policy director at the Sierra Club said foreign leaders likely moved quickly to join the deal to close off any future debate over the need for international climate action. God forbid that we would be able to debate. This is settled. You got to believe this to be politically correct. No more debate allowed, even when we're shivering in the winter time. I mean, they're telling us it's hotter than it's ever been, but it's not. The temperatures have not increased in the last 18 years. Check the facts. Furthermore, it was warmer 1,000 years ago than it is right now. 1,000 years ago, the Vikings sailed through the northern straits. You can't do it today. They've dug down in Greenland through 12 feet of ice and found farmland that was being farmed 1,000 years ago. So it was much warmer 1,000 years ago than it is right now. And yet this global one world government scare that they have conjured up, it's all propaganda. All propaganda. Is it a hoax? You better believe it's a hoax. Why are they doing this? Because if they can pass international law to control the carbon emissions of every person on the planet, including every person in the United States of America, they can mandate how much carbon we emit. They can mandate what kind of fuel we use, what kind of cars we drive, what kind of furnaces we have in our house, all of our human activities. And that's exactly what they want to do, because they are moving us toward a one world government. And the Bible prophesies that world government, and they're doing exactly what God says they're going to do. Anyway, all these people want to be on the right side of the issue. And I believe that Trump showed the world that it isn't a foregone conclusion, Kokut said, noting a summer study concluding that Trump would be the only head of state in the world to doubt the science behind climate change. Wow. Does that mean that we're not going to be a part of the one world government? That the United States is going to go the opposite direction? Believe me, when the Antichrist takes power, I don't want to be a part of the one world government. I want to go in the opposite direction. So I'm getting encouraged here. I think having that idea out there that the world still is debating this in some way, I think puts pressure on countries to act quickly to solidify the process and continue to move forward. Once the deal takes effect, the United States cannot back out of the plan or force changes to it for at least 4 years. Who said? If Obama can act without even running the treaty through the normal process, and everybody's going to say, oh yeah, it's law. If he can do that, his successor can certainly reverse it, and it won't take him 4 years. It may take him 4 minutes. Now, let me repeat to you. The myth that the earth is warming and that this warming is going to produce flooding of our coastlines, it's all myth. No proof. You say, how did this happen? Well, because they wanted a one world government. Therefore, they got with the International Climate Change Committee of the United Nations and said, write certain letters and promote this. And they bent the rules. I mean, there was a huge hacking of emails way back, 2009, released 3 weeks before the climate change conference in Copenhagen. And in those emails, some of the leading scientists that were working on the International Climate Change Committee wrote, we need to hide this decline. And there was even a little cartoon put out, hide the decline, hide the decline, hide the decline. And it was a huge scandal. They even made sure that anybody that didn't believe in the global warming myth would not be published. They would crowd them out of the major publications that do scientific reviews of these works. I mean, it was scandalous. If you want to know the truth, it's out there, but you got to look for it because they're doing everything they can to bury it, bury it, bury it. Well, anyway, continuing on, Trump has opposed the Paris deal since before the United Nations meeting on the matter in December. I mean, why does Trump have to be so practical? Why can't he just be politically correct and just go along? Why does he have to know that it was warmer 1,000 years ago than it is right now, that the Vikings were able to sail through the northern straits. They can't do it today. We're supposed to believe it's warmer now than it's ever been before. Why does he have to dig down and find out through 12 feet of ice in Greenland that they were farming that territory? 1,000 years ago, you couldn't possibly farm it today. It was warmer then than it is now, and none of the horrible catastrophic things occurred that they say will happen now if the temperature goes up 2 degrees. It's laughable, it's ridiculous, and what's really concerning to me is that people are so easily led without thinking for themselves. I mean, Al Gore says the science is settled. I heard his speech at Copenhagen. He said by 2030, the sea levels will rise 18 feet. And the man he quoted as his authority, they asked him right after Gore's speech, he laughed, he said, well, with the most extreme weather, maybe 18 inches, but more likely an inch or two. How does a politician like Al Gore, formerly ran for president, I'm just going to call it like it is. How does he get by with such blatant lies? I am just stunned. I mean, we're watching right now 33,000 emails abolished, took hammers and knocked Hillary Clinton's Blackberries, destroyed them, took bleach, a program designed to bleach hard drives, give immunity to 5 people that are the very closest aides to Hillary Clinton. Immunity. And as far as the immunity agreement, they agreed to destroy, that they could look at their laptops and then destroy them. And they're destroyed today. What kind of absolute corruption has got a hold of this country? I'm astonished. And did you see the secret meeting? Well, it was supposed to be secret, but it turned out getting exposed. Bill Clinton, the night before Comey made his announcement, he visits the Secretary General, Loretta Lynch, for half an hour. And somebody called and squealed, and the newspaper came out and took the pictures. They had told him no photographs, no recorders, nothing, but they got it. And he said, oh, we were talking about grandkids and golf. Sure you were. Sure you were. Anybody that believes that is naive indeed. Okay, I'm on a rant. I know I'm on a rant, but it's corruption, ladies and gentlemen, at the highest levels. Stay with us. Right back.
Take your understanding of the end time to a new level with our Outlines and Quizzes workbook. This workbook accompanies our Understanding the End Time 14 lesson series. As you watch each lesson, follow along with the outlines, then take a quiz and check your answers at the end. These are all contained in one convenient workbook so you can study as well as teach prophecy wherever you go. Use it as a study guide to cement main points and scriptures that Irvin teaches in each lesson. It's also a great tool if you host an End Time Bible study. Help your group solidify what they're learning by getting a copy for each person to follow along with the video and then to take home and study on their own. Get the workbook by calling 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com and be ready to instruct many as the scripture says.
I'm going to go through the rest of this real quick, then I'm going to take your calls, but let's go through this because you got to hear it. Okay, once negotiators struck the agreement, the Republican presidential nominee ramped up his criticism. First, he said he would renegotiate the agreement to get a more favorable deal for the United States. Then he told the energy industry in a May speech that he would cancel it if he were elected. Now, international officials push back. In May, Patricia Espinosa, the UN's new climate chief, said it wouldn't be for Trump to change the terms of the pact. And the possibility of a Trump presidency reverberated among international climate negotiators, with Obama's international climate envoy this spring saying he had to reassure other countries the U.S. could meet its commitments under the deal despite domestic politics. Before the U.S. joined the agreement in September, Obama's top climate change advisor, Brian Deese, said the dynamics of a change in presidential administration is certainly a discussion we have. The history of these agreements is, once they're in place and once the United States has not only supported and signed the agreement, but has formally joined the agreement, that we stay in the agreement that we commit to, Deese told reporters in early September. Do you understand how twisted and corrupt this is? We've not formally adopted the agreement. You can't, by United States law. Any treaty that's signed has to go to the Senate for approval by 2/3. If it doesn't get that, it's dead in the water. But they're acting like it's a done deal. You talk about sheep led to the slaughter. Well, the article finally says, we're quite confident that the United States will continue to be a part of the agreement going forward. Still, Trump could ignore the goals that Obama has set, and some conservatives expect he would do just that. Well, certainly, especially a crooked agreement like this that's illegal. It's illegal. You're not abiding by the U.S. Constitution. You're now bypassing the Constitution. How everything's set up, you are bypassing it in the light of day. But I think the American people are too busy watching sports events and soap operas to even care anymore. Anyway, it drives me crazy. William Yeatman, a senior fellow at the Conservative Competitive Enterprise Institute, said Trump could also insist the Senate needs to ratify the deal. Imagine that. And send it to lawmakers who would likely vote it down. Environmental groups, though, predict that Trump would find there are limits to how much of the climate push he can stop. Kokut predicted world leaders would use diplomatic pressure to pressure countries that don't join the deal into taking action on climate anyway. That's the reason we need a strong president this time. We don't need to be pressured by the world to join their new world order. We need to abstain and to get out of their new world order. Stavins predicted that several environment-related measures like fuel standards for cars or regional climate efforts would remain on the books. Yes, he could slow down action on climate change, but not as dramatically as he may think he could. But Trump would have the power to shape American policy in other ways, including by nominating a ninth justice to the Supreme Court. There is a vacancy right now. The High Court is likely to decide the fate of Obama's biggest climate change regulation, likely in its next term. If the court struck down the rule, the U.S. might have a hard time meeting its commitments under the Paris deal. We've made no commitments, by the way. Obama's made a commitment, but he's going to be out of office in about 3 months. If you control the presidency, then you can exert a huge amount of power, Yeatman said. You can basically not implement your commitments, and you're not going to suffer anything on the world stage. So there you have it. I want to quickly go to the phones. If you're out there and you have a comment or a question, and I know I've been throwing things at you fast and furious today. Nevertheless, the number to call to be on the air with me, 877-END-TIME. 877-363-8463. If you need to reach our operators, that number is 1-800-END-TIME. So to reach me, 877-END-TIME. To reach our operators, 1-800-END-TIME. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and go to the phones right now. Louise is calling from Missouri. Hello, Louise.
Hi, Irvin. I was just wondering if you've ever heard of George Washington's vision or his dream. I mean, we know that God gives his people dreams and visions, and, in my opinion, I just feel, why wouldn't he give our first president, a dream or vision about America?
Yeah, I have read it several times. It's been a little while. since I read it, so it's not as sharp in my memory as it perhaps would have been, but I have read it. He foresaw apparently a revolution sweeping over America, and then we survived and came back stronger than ever. Is that basically the essence as you read it?
Yes, yeah. And
Yeah.
I was wondering if they gave you any hope or...
Well, anytime someone has a vision like that or a dream, I tell it as a dream. But if it's from the Word of God, you can take it to the bank. So I wouldn't base my belief system on this thing that George Washington experienced. But I do know the Bible says that America is going to survive. We're going to be against the New World Order, the world governmental system, the United Nations. In the end, we're going to protect Israel against the United Nations. Those things are clearly depicted in the Bible. Now, is there a chastisement coming first? It could well happen because there's a war coming that's going to kill 1/3 of mankind. And I had some things to talk about today, but there's no time, that Russia is predicting a nuclear war for the very near future. Certainly hope that doesn't happen. Nevertheless, there is a war coming that's going to wipe out 1/3 of mankind. That could be, if this dream of George Washington is in fact legitimate from God, then that could be the catastrophe that he sees coming before America reverses course and gets back on her founding principles. That's the way I see it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you as well, Louise. I am trying, I've got all this going over in my head, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, the Bible prophesies that the world will be ruled by a coalition between Catholicism and socialism. And the new head of the United Nations, the only structure designed to be a world government on earth, is now being led by a Catholic, a devout Catholic socialist. Our vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton is a Catholic socialist. You say, is he a socialist? Certainly he is. Only he calls himself a progressive. That's code for socialist. Now, Bernie Sanders, he comes right out. He says, I'm a socialist. Hillary Clinton takes about the same positions as Bernie Sanders. And she was asked, are you a socialist? She says, I'm a progressive. Well, that's the same position that Cain takes. But when he left Harvard after 2 years in school, he went down to South America and he worked with the Jesuits down at that time, and he visited privately one of the most notorious believers in liberation theology. He walked several miles just to get to commune with him, and that's when liberation theology, which teaches that if Jesus Christ were here today, he would be a Marxist or a socialist, the same thing. So here we have a man running for vice president. He will be one heartbeat away from the presidency. If you hear Donald Trump talk about it, he's saying that Hillary doesn't have the stamina. Well, I'm not going to address that. That's none of my business. But if Donald Trump is right at all, that means whoever's vice president to her has a very strong chance of being the president. Well, whether that happens or whether it does not happen, we'll have to wait and see till November the 9th about that. Nevertheless, here we have a man who is strong Catholic and strong socialist. And so we have all these people in these positions of extreme power. And you find much of that rife throughout Europe as well. Perhaps we'll do a complete study on this at another time. It is just amazing. When you look at the prophecies of the Bible, okay, this is going to be a union between Catholicism and socialism, and Russia is going to be involved. Russia is very comfortable with socialism. Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. He said it's the worst thing that happened to the world in the last 100 years, was the dismantling of the Soviet Union. Do you remember what the name of the Soviet Union was? USSR. That stands for Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. If you think socialism is dead, you're out there in la la land. It's not even sick. Rupert Murdoch, you know, they announced socialism dead when the Berlin Wall fell, when the Iron Curtain was rolled up. And 9 years later, he said, if socialism is dead, why won't it lay down? And then 9 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall and after they announced the victory of free enterprise and capitalism over socialism, 13 of the 15 members of the European Union, I'm talking about Western Europe, supposedly the bastion of free enterprise and democracy, they voted in, 13 out of 15 voted in socialist governments. What in the world's going on? I thought we won the Cold War. Well, while we were winning the arms race, the socialists were winning the ideological battle. They were infiltrating college presidencies. You ask a college student today what they think of socialism, most of them will say, oh, that's the way we need to go. The only thing keeping our country from going totally socialist right now are the older people that hold the older values, because our colleges have been infiltrated. The professors, the presidents, the curriculum, all have been infiltrated with people pushing international socialism. It's undeniable. Do your research. Okay, but we can still turn this around. Number one, we need to pray. I am praying, God, you know what we need. And number two, vote against globalism and vote for freedom and free enterprise. That's what we've got to do. A lot of these people, they are trashing capitalism every chance they can. Pope Francis. Now, I just got to tell you the truth. I know people revere him, holding him up almost as a god. They weep when they see him. They kiss his feet. But he is a dyed-in-the-wool Marxist. He's a socialist. He rails against free enterprise. He rails against what he calls the liquid economy. You know what that means? Well, free enterprise believes that everything seeks its own level, like water seeks its own level. He rails against the liquid economy. Now, can capitalism be unjust? Everything is unjust without Christianity. Yes, it can be misused, but with Christianity, employers treat their employees right. Employees treat their employers right. It has worked wonderful for this nation. It's when we got away from the Judeo-Christian values that everything started going sour. And that's what the socialists blame everything on free enterprise. We got to take away free enterprise. We got to start interfering in the economy. No, we don't. We need to get back to Jesus Christ. We need to restore the Judeo-Christian values. Okay. Well, I've talked to you as fast as I can for 1 hour today, but important things breaking in our world. If you've never gone through the Understanding the End Time series, well, make sure you do it. You get your own copy, 14 DVDs. Call us, 1-800-END-TIME. You're asking for Understanding the End Time. If you have not seen the latest edition of End Time magazine, you need to do it. Globalism is the big story. Call us, 800-END-TIME. Subscribe to the magazine. God bless you all. See you tomorrow.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.